Hello and welcome to Lyla's Lullabies, where we spend time exploring with Lyla, a traveler who wanders the world at her own pace, while sharing her most enriching and restorative moments with you. In tonight's story, we'll follow Lyla as she explores the charming city of Oaxaca in Mexico. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to remember. Just settle in, get comfortable, and let yourself go. We're so glad you're here. Whenever you're ready, let's begin. The February morning in Oaxaca arrived with brilliant sunshine and the sound of church bells echoing across the city. Lyla woke in her small hotel room near the Zócalo, the central plaza, to a symphony of sounds. Bells from multiple churches, the distant calls of street vendors, music already drifting up from somewhere below. She opened the wooden shutters and looked out over terracotta rooftops toward the mountains that ring the valley, their slopes hazy in the morning light. She dressed in light layers. February in Oaxaca was warm during the day, but could be cool in the shade, and made her way downstairs. The hotel was modest but charming, with colonial-era details, like high ceilings with wooden beams and a small courtyard planted with bougainvillea and birds of paradise. Outside, the city was already awake and busy. It was Saturday, and Oaxaca on a weekend had an energy that was palpable. Families out for morning errands, tourists beginning their explorations, vendors setting up stalls, street sweepers working their way methodically down sidewalks. Lyla walked the short block to the Zócalo, the heart of Oaxaca. The plaza opened before her, vast and beautiful, shaded by massive laurel trees, whose branches had been carefully trimmed into geometric shapes. The trees created a leafy canopy that filtered the sunlight and provided welcome shade, and beneath them, the plaza buzzed with activity. Around the perimeter, colonial-era buildings with arched portales created covered walkways where cafes and restaurants had set up outdoor seating. The government palace occupied one side of the plaza, its green stone facade elegant and imposing. The cathedral stood on another side, its baroque exterior showing the wear of centuries but still dignified. Even this early on a Saturday morning, street musicians were already warming up. A marimba band occupied one corner of the plaza, their instruments creating the distinctive wooden tone melodies that were so characteristic of Oaxacan music. In another spot, a trio played traditional son jarocho, their strings and voices carrying across the plaza. A clown was entertaining children near the central kiosk, and a man with an old-fashioned box camera was offering to take portraits. Lyla walks the plaza's perimeter, taking in the scene. Vendors sold balloons shaped like cartoon characters, others offered snacks and drinks, and craftspeople had spread blankets displaying handmade goods, textiles, pottery, carved wooden animals, silver jewelry. The atmosphere was festive without being overwhelming, the perfect blend of local life and tourist activity. She found a cafe under one of the portales, its tables spilling out onto the covered walkway. A waiter appeared immediately, friendly and efficient, offering her a menu. Lyla ordered chocolate de agua, the traditional Oaxacan hot chocolate made with water rather than milk, spiced with cinnamon, and whisked until frothy, and pan dulce, sweet bread to accompany the drink. The chocolate arrived in a traditional clay cup, steaming and aromatic. Lyla took a sip and smiled. It was rich and complex, not too sweet, with a slight graininess from the ground cacao and a warming hint of cinnamon. The pan dulce came on a small plate, several pieces in different shapes and colors, all dusted with sugar. ¿Le gusta el chocolate?" the waiter asked, returning to check on her. Sí, está delicioso, Lyla replied. Es mi primera vez probando el chocolate de agua. Ah, entonces está en el lugar perfecto, he said with a smile. Oaxaca tiene el mejor chocolate de México, tal vez del mundo. His pride in the city's world-renowned chocolate was evident. Lo creo, Lyla agreed. They chatted for a moment about where she should visit in the city, and he recommended the chocolate shops on Calle Mina, if she wanted to buy some to take home. Y los mercados, he added. Tiene que ir a los mercados. After finishing her breakfast, Lyla walked a few blocks to the Templo de Santo Domingo de Guzmán, the great Dominican church that was one of Oaxaca's most impressive colonial buildings. Even from a distance the church was striking, its facade a riot of baroque ornamentation, every surface carved and decorated, creating a visual feast of saints, angels, geometric patterns, and natural motifs. Inside the church was even more spectacular. Gold leaf covered almost every surface, creating a shimmering interior that glowed in the light filtering through the windows. The ceiling was painted with elaborate frescoes, and the walls were decorated with paintings and sculptures. The main altar was a masterpiece of gilded woodwork, rising toward the ceiling in tiers of carved figures and architectural details. Lyla walked slowly through the nave, trying to absorb the overwhelming richness of the decoration. It was baroque taken to its extreme, every inch of space filled with art and ornament, creating an effect that was both beautiful and almost dizzying in its complexity. Connected to the church was the former monastery, now home to the Museo de las Culturas de Oaxaca. Lyla paid her entrance fee and began exploring the museum's collections, which told the story of Oaxaca's indigenous cultures from ancient times through the present. The ethnobotanical garden visible through the cloister windows was beautiful, a carefully curated collection of plants native to Oaxaca, arranged in geometric beds that echoed the building's colonial architecture. She'd read that guided tours of the garden were available, and she made a mental note to return another day for a proper visit. The museum itself was fascinating, with artifacts from the various cultures that had inhabited the Oaxaca Valley, Zapotec, Mixtec, and others. There were stone carvings, pottery, jewelry, and the highlight of the collection, treasures from Tomb 7 at Monte Albán, including elaborate gold jewelry and carved bones that demonstrated the sophisticated artistry of pre-Columbian Oaxaca. After spending nearly 2 hours in the church and museum, Lyla emerged back into the bright sunshine, her mind full of images of gold leaf and ancient artifacts. She made her way toward the markets, following the flow of people carrying shopping bags and the increasing density of street vendors. The Mercado Benito Juárez was housed in a building near the Zócalo, its interior a labyrinth of stalls selling everything imaginable: produce, meat, cheese, flowers, clothing, crafts, household goods. The air was rich with scents: chiles drying, chocolate being ground, fresh flowers, cooked food, spices she couldn't identify. Lyla wandered through the narrow aisles, observing the commerce and the social interactions as much as the goods for sale. Women in traditional dress bargained with vendors, their voices rising and falling in the musical cadence of bargaining. Tourists navigated carefully with their bags, trying not to knock over displays. Children darted through, running errands for parents, or simply playing. She bought a bag of chapulines, grasshoppers toasted with garlic, chile and lime, a Oaxacan delicacy. The vendor weighed them out and handed them over with a smile. Lyla tried one, finding it crunchy and intensely flavored, surprisingly good. She ate a few more as she continued exploring, the salty, spicy, tangy flavor growing on her. From the Benito Juárez market she walked to the nearby Mercado 20 de Noviembre, known especially for its food stalls. The market's interior was organized around a central area filled with grills, the famous Pasillo de Humo, or smoke corridor, where vendors grilled meat for tacos and tlayudas. Even though it wasn't quite lunchtime, the grills were already working, smoke rising toward the ceiling vents, the smell of grilling meat filling the air. Lyla walked through, drawn by the sights and smells, but resisted ordering a full meal. She had lunch plans and didn't want to spoil her appetite. Instead, she bought a small piece of quesillo, Oaxacan string cheese, from one vendor and a few pieces of candied fruit from another. The cheese was mild and slightly salty, with a stringy texture that made it fun to eat. The candied fruit was intensely sweet, preserved in thick syrup, and Lyla ate it slowly, savoring the concentrated fruit flavor. Leaving the markets, she made her way toward Jalatlaco, a neighborhood just northeast of the center, that was known for its colorful houses and artisan shops. The walk took her through gradually quieter streets, away from the tourist center and into what felt like more residential areas. Jalatlaco announced itself with color, houses painted in vibrant shades of pink, blue, green, yellow, and orange, their walls often decorated with murals or stencil designs. The streets were narrower here, more intimate, and the atmosphere was peaceful, especially after the bustle of the markets. She wandered through the neighborhood streets, admiring the architecture and the care residents had clearly taken with their homes. Flowers spilled from window boxes and doorway planters, and several houses had small tiendas, shops, built into their front rooms, selling everything from groceries to handmade textiles. One shop in particular caught Lyla's eye, a small textile shop displaying beautiful woven fabrics in the window. She entered and found herself in a space that was part shop, part workshop, with a loom set up in the back and bolts of fabric stacked on shelves. A woman emerged from the back, perhaps in her 60s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back and glasses on a chain around her neck. She smiled warmly at Lyla. «Buenas tardes», Lyla said. «Qué hermosos textiles». «Gracias», the woman replied. «Los hago yo misma, bueno, yo y mi hija». She gestured for Lyla to look around, and Lyla examined the fabrics with genuine interest. The weaving was extraordinary. Complex patterns in natural dyes, the colors rich and subtle. Some pieces used traditional Zapotec designs, while others were more contemporary but still clearly rooted in traditional techniques. ¿Usa tintes naturales? Lyla asked, touching a piece dyed in shades of deep red and pink. Sí, todos naturales, the woman confirmed. Cochinilla para los rojos, índigo para los azules, plantas locales para los amarillos y verdes. She explained her process, showing Lyla skeins of undyed wool and small containers of the natural dyes she used. Her passion for her craft was evident, and Lyla found herself drawn into a conversation about weaving traditions, how techniques were passed down through generations, the challenge of keeping traditional methods alive in a modern economy. Lyla ended up buying a length of fabric, a runner in shades of indigo blue with a geometric pattern. The woman wrapped it carefully in paper and tied it with a string, refusing to let Lyla leave, without also accepting a small bag of dried cochineal insects as a gift. Para que recuerdes Oaxaca, she said with a smile. Lyla replied that she definitely would remember this special city. Carrying her package, Lyla continued through Jalatlaco, eventually finding a small restaurant on a quiet corner. The restaurant was modest, with just a few tables in a small courtyard and a menu handwritten on a chalkboard. It was the kind of place locals would know about, but tourists might miss, and Lyla felt pleased to have stumbled upon it. She ordered mole negro, the famous black mole that was one of Oaxaca's 7 traditional moles, with chicken, rice, and handmade tortillas. The meal arrived after a short wait, and Lyla's first taste confirmed this was something special. The mole was complex beyond description. Dozens of ingredients including chiles, spices, chocolate, and other elements, creating a sauce that was simultaneously rich, spicy, slightly sweet, earthy, and utterly unlike anything else she'd ever tasted. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, occasionally wrapping a piece of chicken and mole in a warm tortilla. The rice was simple but perfectly cooked, a neutral base that let the mole shine. A glass of jamaica, hibiscus water, provided a tart counterpoint to the rich food. Other diners occupied the few other tables, a family with children, an older couple, what looked like 2 friends catching up over lunch. The atmosphere was relaxed and unhurried, with the owner occasionally emerging from the kitchen to check on everyone, accepting compliments with pleased modesty. After lunch, Lyla walked back toward her hotel, the midday heat now at its peak. She dropped off her textile purchase in her room, grateful to shed the package, and asked the hotel desk to call a taxi to Monte Albán. The taxi arrived quickly, and the driver, a middle-aged man who introduced himself as Carlos, drove confidently through Oaxaca's streets and then up into the hills. The archaeological site of Monte Albán was about 9 kilometers from the city center, perched on a flattened mountaintop that the ancient Zapotecs had transformed into their capital city. As they climbed, the city spread out below them, and Lyla could see the valley stretching in all directions, ringed by mountains. Carlos pointed out various landmarks, explaining in a mix of Spanish and English about the site's history and significance. At Monte Albán, Lyla paid her entrance fee and began exploring the ancient cities. The main plaza was enormous, a vast open space surrounded by pyramids, temples, and other structures. The scale was impressive, made more so by the mountaintop location and the panoramic views in all directions. She climbed the south platform first, the largest pyramid at the site. The stairs were steep but manageable, and the view from the top was spectacular. The entire plaza spread out below, the other structures visible in their relationships to each other, and beyond it all, the Oaxaca Valley in every direction. From up here it was possible to understand why the Zapotecs had chosen this location. The strategic advantage of the height, the symbolism of a city floating above the valley floor, the way the mountains framed the site on all sides. Lyla spent over an hour exploring the site, climbing various structures, examining the carved stones and stelae that told stories of conquest and ritual, imagining the city as it must have been at its height, full of people, colorful buildings, ceremonies and markets, and daily life. The afternoon was warm but not oppressive, and a breeze at this elevation made it pleasant to walk around. Other visitors were scattered across the large site, small groups or solo explorers like herself, everyone moving at their own pace through the ancient city. She found a shaded spot on the north platform and sat for a while just taking in the view and the sense of history. The Zapotecs had built this city, flourished here for centuries, then eventually abandoned it. Other cultures had used the site after them, and now it stood as a testament to their achievements, carefully preserved and studied, visited by people from around the world. Eventually she made her way back to the entrance, where taxis waited for return trips to Oaxaca. The drive down offered different views, and Lyla watched the city come closer, the late afternoon light beginning to soften the edges of buildings and mountains. Back in Oaxaca, she asked the driver to drop her near the Zócalo. The plaza had a different energy in the late afternoon. Families with children, couples strolling, more street vendors setting up for the evening. The marimba music still filled the air, though possibly from a different group than the morning performers. Lyla walked through the streets around the Zócalo, exploring blocks she hadn't visited earlier. She found a rooftop bar on one of the buildings surrounding the plaza, climbed the stairs, and emerged onto a terrace with spectacular views over the city. The bar was open air, with tables arranged to maximize the views and a small bar in one corner. String lights crisscrossed overhead, not yet lit but ready for evening. Lyla chose a table near the railing and ordered a mezcal. She was in Oaxaca, after all, the birthplace of the spirit, and some botanas, light snacks to accompany the drink. The mezcal arrived in a small copita with orange slices dusted with sal de gusano, worm salt made with ground agave worms, salt, and chile. The server explained the traditional way to drink it: a sip of mezcal, a bite of orange, a lick of the spicy salt. Lyla tried it and understood immediately why this combination worked. The mezcal was smoky and complex, the orange provided sweetness and acidity, and the salt was earthy and spicy, all the flavors playing off each other beautifully. The botanas arrived, a plate of quesillo chapulines and small empanadas. She ate slowly, savoring the snacks while watching the sun descend toward the western mountains. As the light changed, Oaxaca transformed. The sky shifted from blue to gold, to orange to pink, and the buildings began to glow in the warm light. The cathedral and Santo Domingo were particularly beautiful, their baroque facades catching the sunset and seeming to glow from within. Other customers arrived at the rooftop bar, couples seeking romantic views, groups of friends starting their evening, solo travelers like herself. The atmosphere was relaxed and convivial, everyone appreciating the view and the pleasant February evening. The string lights came on as darkness approached, creating a warm glow across the terrace. From somewhere below, music drifted up. Live music, it sounded like, possibly from one of the restaurants around the plaza. The sound was distant but clear enough to make out the melody, something traditional and melodic. Lyla ordered another mezcal, this one from a different village, and the server explained the differences in production methods that gave each region's mezcal its distinctive character. This one was slightly less smoky, with notes of fruit and a smooth finish that made it dangerously easy to drink. As she sipped her mezcal and watched the city settle into evening, Lyla felt a deep contentment. The day had been rich with experiences: the morning chocolate in the Zócalo, the overwhelming beauty of Santo Domingo, the sensory feast of the markets, the quiet discovery of Jalatlaco and the textile shop, the complex flavors of mole negro for lunch, the ancient grandeur of Monte Albán, and now this, a rooftop perch watching sunset over Oaxaca, while traditional music played somewhere below. The music continued, and Lyla recognized it now as son jarocho, the same style she'd heard that morning. The strings and voices created melodies that were at once joyful and melancholic, simple and complex, traditional and timeless. Other people at the bar were swaying slightly to the rhythm, and a couple at a nearby table had started dancing in the small space near their table, their movements unself-conscious and joyful. The sky had deepened to dark blue, and stars were beginning to appear. The city lights below created their own constellation, and the mountains around the valley were dark silhouettes against the sky. Church bells rang somewhere, marking the hour, their sound carrying clearly in the still evening air. Lyla closed her eyes for a moment, letting the music wash over her, feeling the slight warmth from the mezcal, the pleasant tiredness from a day of walking and exploring, the satisfaction of having experienced a place deeply rather than superficially. The music continued its gentle, rhythmic patterns, and she let herself drift with it, her thoughts becoming less linear, more impressionistic, images from the day floating through her mind like scenes from a dream. The gold leaf of Santo Domingo, the smoke rising from market grills, the indigo blue of her purchased textile, the vast plaza of Monte Albán, the pink sky at sunset, the taste of chocolate and mole and mezcal. Around her, the rooftop bar hummed with quiet conversation and laughter, the clink of glasses, the rustle of the evening breeze through the string lights. The music from below provided a soundtrack to it all, that distinctive Oaxaca sound that seemed to capture both the region's indigenous roots and its colonial overlay, its ancient traditions and its vibrant present. Lyla opened her eyes and looked out over the city one more time. Oaxaca spread below her, alive and beautiful, ancient and modern era. A place where cultures layered upon each other like the complex flavors in mole, creating something unique and irreplaceable. She took another small sip of mezcal, letting it warm her throat and settle deeper into her chair. The music continued, the city lights glowed, and Lyla let herself be held by the moment, grateful for this place, content with the day, at peace in the warm Oaxaca night.